down, my beautiful people. I am Shayoon Mendeluk, and today I am so excited to bring on somebody who is so dear to my heart and became so dear to my heart so quickly, my beautiful friend Sara Franti, who is joining us here live from Bali. She is one of the first people I fell in love with in Bali, and we quickly became really good friends. She is a beautiful mother, a speaker, an entrepreneur, a business owner who is living the life, who left a life in the West to create a beautiful life here in Bali. And she has a beautiful son, Taj, who's also almost the same age as Aya. She's in an interracial relationship with a beautiful human named Michael Franti, and we have so much in common. She's also a woman of color. She is Persian, and she's just such a beautiful human being. Everybody welcome Sara Franti.
My Bali bestie!
Oh my God, I'm her best friend too. One of the most beautiful things that attracted me to Sara was how real, how authentic, how beautiful her and her relationship is with her beautiful husband, Michael, and how just really real and authentic they are, and how authentic she is as a human. And it's super rare to find people who resonate and are on the same vibration as you, especially when you're in a different country and you're trying to find your tribe and your community, and they stuck out to us so much. Sara is such a beautiful human, and she is just so authentic. And so I wanted to bring her on the show to hopefully give our listeners and everybody a chance to understand how important it is to be your true authentic self. And so can you tell us about that?
Yeah, please? Absolutely. Well, I've been on such a journey in my life, and I feel like you've hit so many points of that journey, like becoming a mother, or transitioning from being an employee to an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Or being a child of refugee parents and having to figure out what my identity is, bringing different cultures together. And only until recently, probably becoming a mother brought everything to this pivotal point of me realizing who I want to be. But I was able to understand the importance of being your authentic self. And I feel like the word authenticity, there was a period of time where it was being overused almost, like everybody was trying to be authentic, but I feel like we lost the meaning of what it actually meant.
Yeah.
But it's an important word. And so I went through many trials and tribulations, as we all do, and I was able to realize that I had to be myself, and I had to figure out who myself is so that I can be a business owner, and I could be a mother, and I could show up as a wife, and I could show up as a mother and a sister and a friend. It's been really interesting to go through that. So the first thing, there's three things for me that I believe that someone needs to do the work to be able to figure out who their authentic self is. Mm-hmm. And the first thing is to get clear on your values. And so that journey can look very different for each person. Yeah. But for me, I was able to do I did a lot of meditation work and reflection work, almost like mapping, and to figure out like what were the pivotal moments in your life that really defined what brought purpose. Yeah. And as I mentioned, I grew up with refugee parents. They're from Iran. They came to Canada in 1982, and they came because of religious persecution. So I was raised in a Baha'i family, in the Baha'i faith. And in the early 80s, 1979, there was an Islamic revolution, and the country went from a monarchy to an Islamic republic. And so the Baha'is were no longer recognized as a religion.
Can I ask you, for those who don't know, what is the Baha'i faith?
Yes, the Baha'i faith is a religion. It's an independent religion, and Baha'is believe that all religions come from one God, and that religion is progressive, so that as social norms change, a new religion will come to help address the social norms. Beautiful. And so it's an independent religion, and it wasn't recognized by the government of Iran that came into power in the early 80s.
It wasn't?
It wasn't. Okay. And so Baha'is at the time were being hung. Baha'is right now are still being persecuted in Iran.
To this day.
You can't get a high school diploma. You can't own certain businesses.
So do you have to fake not being it?
Well, a lot of people, you don't. Yeah. And I think that's the conviction, is every official document has a religion line.
No way.
And if you don't put in Muslim or to believe in Islam, you can't open a food store because they believe that it's unclean. Yeah. So there's not a lot of opportunity. But in the early 80s, they were basically out of fear trying to get people to give up, recant their faith.
Are Baha'is considered Muslim?
No, they're not.
They're not.
And they're not a sect of Islam. And so the government of Iran wasn't recognizing it as a religion. And they saw them almost like as a barrier to their work and their cause. So they were going into homes. They broke into my grandparents' home. They would jail them. They would force them to recant their faith. If they didn't recant, they were hung. So many Baha'is were killed. They were setting their homes on fire. So my parents at the time were young. They were newlyweds. They were in their late 20s. They were in the Philippines going to university.
In the Philippines?
In the Philippines. My sister was born in the Philippines.
Really?
Yeah. And
amazing.
The government of Iran asked all the outside governments to cancel all student visas or all visas. So my parents literally were countryless. Their visas were canceled, so they had to leave the country, the Philippines.
Because of them following.
Because of the revolution that was happening in Iran. The government cut off all money transfers. So anyone who was outside of the country and had money in Iran could no longer access the funds. So my parents applied, now in the Philippines with a young child, my older sister was 2, they applied to Canada, Sweden, Australia, and the United States as refugees. And the Baha'i community of Canada were sponsoring Iranian Baha'is as refugees to come to Canada. That's how you became Canadian. And that's how I became.
No way.
It's so surreal, and that's why I feel so connected to the issues right now, which we can get into after, like the current affairs about illegal immigration and refugees and around the world, and we're going to be seeing more of this, but. So that's how I was born in Canada, and I came to Canada, and my parents worked really, really hard to make sure that we felt like we were exactly where we were supposed to be, like we belonged. And they worked really hard. They went through challenging times, but we were always well dressed. We always had food on the table to eat. They worked really hard to go back to school to get their education recognized again. My mom was a nurse. My dad was an engineer. But when I was 6 years old, we were at this event called the Calgary Stampede, and I had to do some meditation work to remember this. Wow. And I remember we were on an escalator. It was a busy room, and my parents were in front of me, and there was a woman in front of my dad, and she turned around, and she told my family to go back where we came from. And it's one of those standard lines that we're still hearing, you know? And I remember feeling so embarrassed as a 6-year-old child. And I felt so upset for my parents, so upset for my family. And I never wanted to feel that feeling of shame again, and anger and hurt and pain. And just being a child of Iranian parents too, it's like you always strive to do your best. Yeah. And so I always did good in school. I volunteered. We were kind to people. Serving the greater good was so important. Like us doing service brought purpose to our family through our faith and just in our family values, to the point where I remember one of the first things we did to give back that I remember as a child was my mom and dad had made these bookmarks, and it was a rose that was cut out that my dad had photographed, and on the bookmarks it says, "Plant not but the rose of love in the garden of thy heart." Stop. And my mom made the tassels, and we went as a family and dropped them off at our neighbors' homes as gifts. So accepting all was so important, and we were an outsider, and we wanted to be accepted. And so I was like on this path, and I was like wanted to be this overachiever. And then when I was 12, I was on the school bus coming home, and there was always this kid that was always teasing me. And I think because I was taller, maybe I just felt like I had to be like the defender. Yeah. But he was older on the back of the bus, and I was on the middle of the bus, and I remember he yells from the back of the bus, and he calls me brown cow. And I was just like, I wasn't hurt anymore. Now I was just pissed. Like, I was like, what the F? Like, I'm working so hard to do everything right, follow the rules, be kind to all, accepting for all. I was 12. Ugh. And so I stopped in that moment, and I was like, what I'm about to say is going to be standing up for every kid who's different on this bus. And I remember I just like was quiet for a minute, and all of a sudden I yell as loud as I can, at least brown cows make chocolate milk. Which is like, what the, I know, it's good, right? It's good. Like, maybe, I feel like, sometimes I say like, maybe as an adult, I would say something different, but maybe I wouldn't,
oh,
you know?
Sarah. That's the
But
best.
what it meant, like when I think about it as an adult, I'm like, what I was basically trying to say is that difference has value. Yeah. Like our differences have value, and our differences are different is beautiful, and different is important. And I was defending myself in every brown kid or different kid or kid who was bullied on that bus, and that was important to me to defend those people too, because of the values that my parents raised me on. So one of my values that I know that I was able to recognize for myself is that our differences have value. But then the next step is to find the courage to live in those values, which is so challenging as individuals and as people in the world, because it means we're going to have to disappoint some people in our life.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it might mean we have to disappoint the people that are closest to us, who might have different expectations of how they want us to live or the way they want us to be. Mm-hmm. And so that was really interesting. And I was super strong in my convictions and my faith. And the Baha'i faith is still very, very important to me and a part of my life. But there was this period where I was like living at home, and I was teaching Sunday school. When I went to university, I was on the Campus Baha'i Student Association, and I was like, the camp counselor at Baha'i camp.
So what is Baha'i faith? Like, what does it entail?
So the Baha'i faith, so it's an independent religion. We believe that all religions come from one God, and so we're accepting of all religions. So we believe that the Bible is holy, the Quran is holy, the Torah is holy.
And where does it stem from?
So Prophet Baha'u'llah founded it in Iran.
Okay.
And so as Baha'is, we don't believe that we're the last religion. Like there's going to be another faith that's going to come as the world changes. But the principles that are really important to us are like equality of men and women. It's the first faith to actually have in its holy scriptures that men and women are equal. Elimination of extreme wealth and poverty, universal education, harmony of science and religion.
Sign me up. Yeah.
In the Baha'i faith, it's they say that if you have a son and a daughter, and you only have enough money to send one of your children to school, you have to send your daughter to school, because the mother is the educator of the home. So this is the foundation that I was raised on. Wow. But we're all imperfect beings. We're all human. We're all trying to figure out our way of being in the world. Yeah. And there was a point in my life where the world was really black and white. If you did this, you were bad. If you did this, you were good. Yeah. And there were some clear lines drawn in the sand. And then I moved out from home, and I moved to a different city to go to school, and it was so hard. I had my first panic attack. I was so homesick. Where did you move? So I grew up in Calgary, and I moved to Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. Okay.
Yeah, this is the good stuff.
Which Saskatoon was like the armpit of Canada. And if anyone's listening to this, this was 2005. Calgary was booming. It was like the hottest city in Canada to live in, and I'm moving away from it. And everybody was like, why are you going to Saskatchewan, which is an agriculture province? And
why were you?
Well, I know, good question. So I did 3 years of applied sciences, like hard sciences, and it was miserable. And I thought I wanted to be a physiotherapist, and I had this dream of working with acquired brain injury patients. I had this big plan, right? We all have these plans, and they end up
super normal,
Middle Eastern, like. And my mom was a nurse, and I was so miserable because it was a master's program, and she's like, just do your undergrad in nursing, so that just become a doctor,
a lawyer, an engineer, Sarah, please.
She's like, just do your nursing degree, and then you can go do your master's.
Backup plan to back up your backup plan to back up your backup plan. Okay.
So I was like, okay, which really, like, at that point it was a backup plan, but I'm so grateful for it, obviously. Yeah. But
because you are a registered nurse.
Yes. And so I moved to Saskatoon and to go to nursing school, to finish nursing school, and it was like, I hated it. I didn't think I was going to be a nurse until my last semester of school.
Yeah.
It actually like clicked that I was like, this is actually the greatest job. I remember I started nursing school, and the first semester they just teach you like how to like make a bed, or like just get familiar in a hospital room, you know? And then a group of medical students, like first year medical students, walked by me, and I was just like, oh my God. Like, and now if you ask me, I have the greatest fucking job. Like, being a nurse is in my DNA.
Yeah.
And it's the greatest privilege, and it's the greatest.
Your
thing that
mom
ever
must have
happened
been
to
so
my life.
proud too.
Yeah, my mom. I think my mom and dad were still hoping that I'd end up being one of the med students.
She's gonna be a doctor. No, she's gonna be a nurse.
I think my dad still sometimes asks me when I'm gonna be a dentist.
Stop. After all of this. So that's nice that you're a nurse. So when are you going to be a scientist? It's like, what's the next up in the brown sword?
I feel like now that I had my son, now my dad's like, okay, you're really busy now. Now you can't. Now
you can't be a real doctor.
But like 2 years ago, he was like, so when are you going to go be like, I even wrote the dental entry exam. Oh my God. I know.
Did you want to be a dentist at some point? Is that why? Or did he just want you to be?
I thought I wanted to be a dentist, but I had an opportunity that was really paved for me to get into dental school, and I kind of self-sabotaged myself out of it.
Yeah.
And I think it's because I had this subconscious
Because she's so authentic. She just wants to do her own thing. It's like, no, that's too easy. I'm going to do the real way.
The real way. Yeah. So I moved to Saskatoon, and I realized that all those lines that I had drawn in the sand don't actually exist.
Okay.
Because you can live a certain way, and still be a really good person, you know? And what I realize is what's most important are your foundational values of who you want to be in the world and the change you want to make in the world. Like, it doesn't matter if you choose to drink a glass of wine, you know? Like, it doesn't matter if you want to go out into the club and get drunk one day. Like, that doesn't really matter. What matters is how do you treat other people around you? And I think sometimes we get so caught up. Maybe people just need structure, you know, and they need a system to live by to help guide them. But then as humans, we just get so attached to these guidelines and rules that we're not able to see that the world is actually really gray.
Yeah, and speaking of guidelines and rules, and coming from a background of immigrants and immigrant parents, I'm like that too as well, where I feel like I should be a certain way because I think that it's ingrained into our system that, you know, we have to be with this kind of person, we have to be with this kind of religion, we have to stick to our tribe and all of that. So how did you overcome, or how was it even for you to even, entertain the idea to be with a black man and being Persian, you know? How was that?
Well, it's funny because I always thought, like, if I marry a Persian Baha'i guy, my life would be set. Yeah. Because we'll have so much in common that our marriage would be perfect.
Same.
And so
me too. I'll marry a Pakistani, Indian, Muslim man, and it's just going to be amazing. And every single one of those fucking failed.
Right. Like, you want to go to like a Baha'i conference or something, or like maybe you'll go to like a concert and you're like, oh, I'm like totally on the prowl and I'm going to find my husband. And then you realize that it doesn't matter. Like, they can be little shits too, you know? And because we're all dealing with the same thing. Yeah. And so I met Michael, and in my home, because of the faith that we were raised in, the color of our skin has never been an issue. Like, an interracial marriage is never something that was ever questioned. But the thing that was most challenging for my family was that his lifestyle, not his daily, but his career was very different than a standard career. It's not very conventional.
So for those of you who don't know, Sara's married to a beautiful man named Michael Franti, who's a legendary musician. And so that's the lifestyle she's referring to.
And it's funny because when I told my mom that Michael's a musician, like, she's thinking like drugs, sex, and alcohol. And backstage with Michael, it's actually like hummus, kombucha, and a veggie plate. Like, it's the complete opposite.
It's love.
It's love. Yeah. But the fear is real because it's an unknown. And so we also have an age difference of 18 years, which is also something that can bring a lot of uncertainty. And so my parents had a lot of fear for me, and they questioned both of us a lot to make sure that our love was real and it was founded on us, our real relationship, and not maybe being like starstruck or just
did they think
physical.
You were starstruck for a while?
Totally.
They
were
did?
like, yeah, they totally thought I was starstruck, and I was like, no, I'm like, he's not like, he's great, but I'm like,
he's not that cool. I'm cooler.
I was trying to tell my parents, like, you guys raised a really intelligent, strong daughter.
Yeah.
And so
give me some credit.
Give me some credit. Like, don't fear that I'm just jumping into this thing because I'm just on this like cloud 9 of love. And it was really hard at the time because I was this rock star daughter, straight A, did really good, got all the awards, valedictorian, all this kind of stuff, to now being like the black sheep who wants to marry this guy who does not fit the boxes for a lot of families. And so it was hard at the time, but now when I can look back in hindsight, especially being a mother myself now, I see that a lot of their questions and the way that they challenged us in our relationship and challenged our decision making was rooted in love, which sometimes came out as
just wanted the best
fear.
for you.
They wanted the best for me. And so it took a lot of courage for me to be able to live in my values of wanting to be with someone who inspired me to be a better person.
Were you scared to go to your parents?
Yeah. I was like sweating. I remember I was nauseated. But the funny thing is that I had never brought a boyfriend home. You just don't do that.
We don't have boyfriends.
We don't have boyfriends. You like meet them, you see them, you never go on a date, you always hang out in a group.
Yep.
And then when you're ready to get married, you just
get
bring
married.
them home.
You just bring them.
And so all of a sudden, out of nowhere, like I've never had a boyfriend, and I'm like, I want to marry this guy.
Home. Wow.
I didn't even bring him home. I brought the idea of him home, and my parents were like, "Where is this coming from?" Yeah. And so I like stuck to my guns. I was like a stubborn ass daughter.
Because you were truly in love.
I was truly in love.
You believed in that.
I believed in it, and I saw the potential of the relationship, and I saw the way that the relationship elevated me as a person in the world and who I wanted to be. And I believe in Michael. Like I believed in Michael, and I believed in him, and I believe in our relationship. And so even now, like my mom will go, "How are you doing? You know, like, are you happy?" And I'll say, yeah. Like, we still go through our shit. Like, everybody. If anyone tells you their relationship is perfect, they're lying, you know, because I always say our relationship is imperfectly perfect because we go through the same stuff everyone else does. We argue because he leaves his beard clippings in the sink and I leave my hair in the shower, you know, and we argue about bigger stuff, you know, but we have committed to each other, to stick through it. And I think that's what makes our relationship so great for each other.
There's no other option except for each other.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful. Wow. And you guys are such a powerhouse, and having such a back like you, like for him to experience you, was that for him just so, beautiful and new? Or was he just like, wow, there's,
I mean, I think probably he needs to answer that because I can probably make assumptions.
Just tell me, assume. Just fucking assume, Sarah.
Sometimes I still tease him and I say men always say they want strong women, but do they really? Like, because we challenge you, we challenge the partners that we have. And I think that as a woman, women have it hard because we're expected to be soft, sweet, feminine mothers. I mean, we see these memes on social media all the freaking time. And there's a reason why people keep resharing them. It's because we're caught in this like really challenging place where we have to be a go-getter, a doer. We have to get shit done, but then we have to like flip the switch and all of a sudden be really sweet and like hold space for our partners and hold space. And
you're living a booth. What's it like for you being such a powerhouse entrepreneur, multiple businesses, with somebody who's had, being with a partner who's had a career before you? Like, tell me about that, and how do you guys like work around that or work together, and what's that dynamic like?
Well, Michael's been really incredible in bringing me into the projects that he already had going on in a supportive role, not in a role where I was not in a leadership role,
Yeah.
but just in a supportive role, which felt really good for me.
Yeah.
And he's so supportive in me creating my own projects. If I haven't, like, if anyone's my number one cheerleader, it's Michael.
Yeah.
He's never questioned a decision that he's always just rooting, cheering me
Yeah.
on. We're always honest with each other, which sometimes can be challenging. We'll give each other some brutal, honest feedback, which I think is important. But for me as an individual, I had to remember that Michael's been working on his career for 20 years before me, and that I'm not in competition with him. And it was actually my mom who told me that once, because I think she just felt it one day. She was visiting, and she was just kind of like, she almost had like a quiet word with me, and she's like, you know, Sara, you're not in competition with your husband, right?
So I just want to tell you something.
And it was really cool to hear my mom remind me about that, and that I have to move at my own pace, and I'm the one who's always moving the goalposts. It was hard to see that my husband's like maybe making X amount of dollars on doing something, and I'm only making X or whatever. And so it's just really important to kind of like almost check myself and remind myself that everything comes in its own time, and to just show up
together. It's not a competition.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Wow. And you guys are how many years apart?
We're 18 years apart.
And you have a two-year-old
next
Tashi.
week. Yeah.
So beautiful. And how is that, being a mom and leaving America and just settling here in Bali? Like, what was that like, and what is that like?
Well, Michael has always wanted to live in Bali, and I could never, like, he was like, we should spend more time there. And like, we would always come to Bali to visit our hotel, Soulshine Bali, and we would host a retreat, and then we'd be back on the road doing something else. And so I could never picture us living
When
here.
was Soulshine started originally?
Soulshine, so Michael acquired the land, purchased land in 2007, and the doors opened in 2010.
Okay.
And Michael built it completely on his own. Like, there's no investors. He actually jokes and he says my investors were Visa, MasterCard, and American Express.
He told me that too.
It's like, cause like everyone's like, who are your investors?
And it's like American Express, babe.
Yeah.
He told me that the first day I met him.
Yeah. So he worked really hard, you know, to bring it to life, and it was a true passion project. So it opened 2010.
What is Soulshine?
Soulshine is a hotel, and then it's a retreat space, and we've also launched a pop-up day club.
Yes.
But we are transforming it now to be a wellness retreat center. Okay. We were 16 rooms, so it was very boutique, and now we've doubled the size.
And you built it from ground up.
We've built it from the ground up.
Wow.
So Michael built the first part from the ground up, and now I built the second part with him from the ground up.
Cute. You guys are so cool.
But so I would joke and I would say I acquired Soulshine as by way of marriage, but we bust our asses off for it.
You two are some of the only people I know that actually work so hard all day, every day.
Yeah,
so
I'm like,
beautiful.
follow the Instagram, because right now I'm doing the Instagram on it, and we do, and we love it.
Mm-hmm.
Like we do it because we love it, and that's something that I've had to learn. That just with like the limited time that you have, that it's like if you do it and you don't love it, you're just gonna be
passion
mean.
project.
You're gonna be a
what are you
mean
doing
person.
it for? Yeah, exactly.
So we came to Bali to host a retreat at Soulshine.
Yeah.
And then within 2 weeks, so we arrived on the February 27th. We met you like 3 days later.
Yeah.
By March 10th,
we got locked down.
By March 10th, Michael's tour got canceled. March 16th, our flight got canceled. March 30th, the borders closed. And I was like panicking.
April 1st, we were best friends.
Yes. Thank God you kept messaging me and you're like, come visit us.
No, I didn't, like... Sorry, you messaged me. No, I know. I've been trying to get you out to Ulu for so long.
I know.
Amazing. So in this time when everything shut down and all of the pandemic was happening and all of the crazy Black Lives Matters and all of this, you know, uncomfortable things that we don't want to talk about happen, how is it for you as a woman of color married to a Black man? How did it affect you? And what is your take on it? And what is your advice to people who want to help in the matter, but they don't understand how, or they feel like if they say anything, it's just going to be taken in a different way? Like, we really need your advice as a woman of color, and also to be married to somebody who is actually Black. So for me, like, just so you know, I'm married to a white man, and I'm the woman of color, and I've experienced so much racism in my entire life, but it's still so different. And even for me, when I post or when I want to post, and I'm like really, happy to engage in certain things, sometimes I am feeling like I'm walking on eggshells, because I'm like, oh shit, like if I say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing, it's going to be portrayed in a different way, even though it's not what I mean. What is your advice, and how can you help us and our viewers and our listeners engage in a way that is supportive without feeling pressure?
So I have a few answers, because there's different angles.
Give it all.
Okay,
please.
So let's talk about relationship first. So I'm a woman of color. I've experienced racism. I have an understanding of systemic racism that my close friends who are white do not.
Yes.
Right? However, being Canadian, also my experience with the government, like just being a person of color in Canada, is different than being a Black person in America. States, in America. And in Canada too, there is very clear systemic racism problems. There is. But like, we live in San Francisco, we live in Hunters Point, which is the hood. And when I first moved in, if there was a police car behind our car, Michael would literally go another way to get away from them. And I was like, what are you doing? Like, I grew up in Calgary, Canada. You love the police. The police were always was always our friend. That's how I was raised, and that was what my interaction was. And I didn't understand it. And then 3 years into living there, like being with Michael got pulled over because he fit the profile of a double homicide.
No way.
That had just happened. And his son was in the car, and they like handcuffed him, put him on the side of the street. And because he just fit the profile of a Samoan man. Like, it was crazy. And the only reason why they let him go was because a fan was walking by and recognized him.
No way.
A really important thing for being Michael's partner and showing up for my partner is doing a lot of listening and understanding, and like letting him have his experience, because my relationship with the system is different than his relationship, and my ancestry is the relationship that my ancestors have had, which I do believe like it's passed on, is different. And so that's the number one thing I think for being Michael's partner, and not speaking for him. I think just letting him speak and me supporting him, because our experiences are different. Just as I don't want him to speak about he should never speak for me about being like a refugee, a first generation immigrant. But the thing about posting online is another thing, which I love talking about that, because I believe in being yourself, and this whole thing of being your authentic self stemmed about this brand and the person that I'm trying to be, which is communicated 95% of the time through my Instagram account, for example. And it's posts that you need to show up in a way that speaks to your values, that you really believe in, because there will be someone who will challenge you. And you have to be so sure of what you're communicating online that when they do challenge you, it's not like a trigger that you're gonna lose sleep on all night. You know what I mean? It's gonna help you avoid going down that social media wormhole, which I'm sure you're probably familiar with.
Super.
And I've broken my own social media rules when I remember it was like the first week that Black Lives Matter was like trending really hard. And someone had posted something, and I literally went from like they reposted. I want to see who did the post. They're a pastor in a small church in Canada. I was writing him directly. It was like the worst. And I remember I was up all night, and Michael walks in the room, and I just start bawling, and I'm like, I broke all my social media rules. Like, I did what I should never do. But we have a nonprofit. And I posted some memes that I feel very true. Like, for example, I posted a meme that says, not all Trump supporters are racist. However, racism is not a deal breaker. And one of our donors of our nonprofit didn't like that I posted that, and he pulled out his support. And that's okay. Like, I'm okay with that, because it just means that our values aren't aligned. And energetically, it means that it's opening up room for someone else to come in and support our work who's more aligned in our values. And I don't feel shame about what I posted either, because I really believe in what I communicated. Your truth. Yeah, and I know that I'm standing up for what is right. And life is gray, but there is a right and a wrong sometimes too. And there are some really clear fucking right and wrongs right now. So that would be my advice. It's like, you don't just share something because someone else shared it. Like, you like communicate what you really believe, because you will be questioned. Yeah. And it could be a family member, it could be a friend, it could be a troll, it could be anyone. Anyone. That's a trigger, yeah. That space. Wow. For me, I haven't experienced anything because I come from I'm white passing. Yeah. And so I come from a place of privilege where I have moments. Like Alexander, yeah, I have moments where the system may not, for example, be on my side or may question where I come from, or if my parents have Iranian citizenship or whatever. American, but it's very clear, like, and I'm the first one to admit it, that I do come from a place of privilege, and I haven't, not recently. I know Michael has. But the thing that has been the most challenging, particularly in this time of the election, is to have people that are close to you that you see are not aligned with these values that you hold, which to yourself feels so obvious. Like, help those who don't have the same privilege as you do, or access, or even just the word equity, or defund the police. Like, people who are just like, well, you should just change the word, and it's like, that's not the point. It's just so it's so obvious. To even explain the obvious, right? Yeah, and it's just so obvious. And so, last week I was just so like the RNC happened. There was all the speeches and everything, and I was just so upset, you know. And there was more killings that were related to police violence, and it just seems so obvious to me, and it was so saddening that like racism is still up for debate, like whether it should be. So that's how it's really hit home. And I actually had this moment where I looked at Michael and I was like, do we cut ties with everyone who I feel like is like supporting Trump? But what I realized though is the answer is no. Because you lose the teachable moments, you lose your opportunity to inspire people to be good, and everyone's on their journey, and they have to do their own learning. You can't get someone from A to Z. And I'm not saying that I'm perfect. You always have to inspire, to inspire. And so it's like, if I cut people out, then I'm just preaching to the choir, and what's the point of doing my work then? You know, like, what's the point if everyone agrees with me? Where I'm so like, yes, cut them out. Yes, you're right, Sarah, cut them out. No, you're right. But we're like, no, that's not what we do. We have to, that's our work. Right? Like, that's our work, is knowing that there is good in all of us. And Michael says, he has a film, and he says in his film too, it says, there isn't someone you wouldn't love if you knew their story. And I believe it. Like, and that happens. Like, if I'm arguing with someone on Instagram about something that's so fucking petty, like, why am I even having this argument? And then you actually dig deep into knowing why and where it comes from. And what I really learned that was as a nurse, because I remember I was like brand new nurse. I was scared shitless. Like, I'd come in with so much anxiety, and I was working on a med surg ward, and I went into this room and I was making this woman's bed, which I thought was so beneath me too, which I've completely shifted that mentality. But she was sitting in the corner of the room and she was critiquing every single thing I did. And I was just getting like so aggravated. And then I was like, when I was in nursing school, we took these every year. You had a development of self course, which you thought was so dumb when you were in the program. And it was probably actually the best thing they taught you. You learned to communicate. And they talk about therapeutic communication. And so I was like, okay, she's pissing me off right now. Let me be therapeutic in this moment. So I became inquisitive. And what I found out was that her husband died on this exact same ward a year ago. And she's actually really scared to be here. And she has a lot of hurt and pain. And it shifted this energy. And I think it goes, this energetic shift in perspective, I can apply that now at 36 years old trying to inspire people to be their best selves, like whatever that looks like. And so no, I shouldn't cut people out just because they don't agree with me. I should hold space for them, whatever that means. I have to do that.
Yeah.
And I have to work through my own shit to not let it trigger me. You know what I mean? And to keep myself focused on like the work that I have to
be
do.
the example.
Keep clear on your values.
Yeah.
But the third thing is to be your authentic self is to get clear on your values, have the courage to live in those values, which we talked about. And the third thing is self-compassion.
I'm crying.
Be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
Because we'll break our social media rules and we'll get into that spiral and we'll be super upset. It's like, be kind to yourself. You're in constant evolution. Your values will change. The people in your life will change, and it's like, just acknowledge that. And it's not about taking the fucking bubble bath. Like, take the bubble bath, but if you don't change the voice in your head, it doesn't matter how many bubble baths you take, it's not gonna help, you know? And so it's about being kind to yourself, and that's been my biggest journey. I think that's the thing that's been the hardest for me. And I most recently took a self-compassion course. It was only 8 weeks and it changed my life. Doing a loving kindness meditation before a challenging conversation has been such a tool, because it's just giving myself permission to like bring in this energy and this shift in perspective. And it's cool because you realize that all the little things that have happened in your life really have brought you to this place, and that we've all kind of been doing the work. And I'm sure all of us have in some way, and it's just like puzzle pieces, you know, it's like little cookies, it's like the ingredients to a cookie or something, and then all of a sudden you like wake up and all the drops in the bucket is full. And I feel like I'm slowly like feeling like the bottom of my bucket is now covered, and now I get to like keep adding more drops. But
you know, you made me speechless. Honestly, you've made me really speechless and emotional, because it's so rare to find people who live their truth like this. And I love you so much. Thank you.
I love you. And we're all learning, and I'm still learning every single day from you and everyone around me. I'm crying too.
Sara, tell everyone where we can find you, please. What's your social handle?
It's Sara Aga Franti, so SaraAgahFranti.
We'll put it right here. Thank you guys so much for watching. We love you. Please follow. Please follow.
Don't edit this, okay? Leave it in just like this.
Please follow Sara, and also follow Soulshine Bali. Thank you so much, you guys, and we will see you next week.
Mwah.